Perfect. I think we are this is just setting up in order to go live.
Ooh, and we're pretty much on time. Great.
Exactly. We are on time. Yeah, just about. All right. And I think we have just popped up in screen. We'll wait around for just a moment more to make sure that, that everybody is there, and then we'll be good. All right, let's bring this back up as well. Where are we? Here we are. Perfect. So I think everybody should be able to see us. I'm going to wait and make sure that if you can see us and we're in the group and you're watching us live, drop us a message, say hi, and let us know that you're here. Because otherwise, we don't necessarily know. Perfect. All right. There we go. All right. And I just have another screen down here. So I'm just going to load us up on the other screen, not so that I can see myself, but so that I can check it's all working. And there we are. Perfect. Okay. Perfect. Hi, Sadia. Hi, Artie. Hi, Sheena. Hello, everybody who is saying hello in the chat. People are saying hello. People are watching us. That is great. People are in the 11 plus journey. Perfect. All right. Should we get going?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So just before we do, can we make sure, can everybody hear me, and then can everybody hear Afrosa as well?
Hi.
Perfect. I think everybody can hear us. No one's saying so. No one's saying they can't hear either of us. It's always good to check before we start. Okay, brilliant. Right, so I suppose a little bit about us before we start. I think I'm hoping most of the 11 plus journey know me, and I'm Jemma Smith. I run the Education Hotel. I'm often in here doing things like Wild Words. I'm a 3 times Oxford grad, run an education consultancy, and I coach students for top scholarships and top schools. So things like King's Scholarship, Wickham Abbey Scholarship, Westminster Challenge, focusing on some of those top schools. I also help students with Oxbridge Prep. However, I am absolutely delighted because I have a real expert with me today. I've got Afrosa here, and I'm quite excited to do this live because because I'm excited to hear what you've got to say. So go ahead and introduce yourself to us.
Oh, you've already given me a lovely introduction. So in my day job, I'm actually a GP, a medical doctor, and I do this kind of a side hobby. Interest developed as I was interviewing university students for MBBS, some Russell Group universities. So I got into interviewing, had some official training, and then my children about 7 years ago started 11 plus journey. So friends and family would ask me about doing 11 plus interviews, and it really took on from there. So and I just love doing it at the moment. Also in my spare time, I'm a school governor for independent prep schools, so I have links with various schools. Mindfulness coach, written some books, and the hardest job of all is I'm a mother to 3 boys. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Perfect. And am I right in thinking that one of them is just wrapping up in terms of 11 plus now?
Yeah, so I had an elder one who did the GCSEs the year that he didn't do the GCSEs, and I had a younger one who has just finished 11 plus. So I've had enough grey hair. I sympathise with every parent out there.
So they're all done. They're all finished as of this year.
I'm medical school training doing 11 plus. You can see the stress. I'm just coming down. So yeah, it was hard.
Perfect. All right. So hopefully you're ready and primed to offer our guys lots of tips about really what the point of these interviews are. I know some people have had these interviews kind of very quickly thrust upon them. Yeah. Some schools have decided to put interviews in instead of tests. Yeah. Some have decided, obviously they come alongside tests as they normally do, and some have decided to increase the amount of interviews that they're doing. So so I suppose let's start with, yeah, what is the interview all about? What's the point of it?
Okay, so the interview is two parts. Obviously, there's you, the interviewee, and then there's the school, the interviewer. And it's really to find a fit. I call it like a marriage or pieces of a puzzle. They want to know if the two pieces will fit. And it really is that simple. So they're going to use various components. So they'll use the written exam, they'll use the headmaster's reference. And then, which I say is the icing on the cake, the interview process, which is usually the last process. Now, in Corona, that icing on the cake actually might be a bit thicker. It might have more importance because some of the written exams are cancelled. So it's a little bit of a different time at the moment. So one of the things they're going to look for in the interview is how will you fit, how will your child fit into this school? They're going to imagine how is that child going to be in the classroom? Are they going to be disruptive? Are they going to be able to take on new ideas? Are they going to work within the team? Are they going to be able to lead? How do they think? Are they teachable? And these are all things they're going to dig out in the interview. They're also going to really weed out those children who they think have been overly prepped. And that could be in the interview as well. So we do always say, don't over rehearse the interview process. And I get clients who come to me and they might be members of Lambda and they've got sheets and sheets of sentences that they've rehearsed. And I have to unrehearse them.
Yep.
Because you're not doing your child justice if you're not showing your true child, your true personality. And I think one of the things about that is that you have to think you're good enough. Okay, so one of the things that I do work on is confidence. I think an 11+ journey is quite draining for the child, and sometimes they're left with a tiny little bit of confidence after everything they've been through. So part of the process is to build up that confidence and to say to them, look, you don't have to be an Olympic gymnast, you don't have to be grade 8 piano. Even if you are grade 2 or something, that's good enough. So we don't make up answers, we literally just bring out the best of you. What have you done in a typical day? So one of the things that I like to tell my clients to do is to do a diary and just say what did you do in the morning, what did you do in the afternoon, and then use that as a mind map. And again, we're not putting words in their mouths, we're just bringing out what you do normally. Could be Monopoly, anything. Lots can be inferred from those kind of things. So part of it is to show what you do in your spare time. We also need to know from the school's point of view, are they going to struggle? And I think some of that is through the written exam. So, are you at a certain academic level? They also want to look at this thing called resilience, which is a really big word. And I don't want the kids to get bogged down in resilience and perseverance and all these kind of things. But just know if you're faced with a difficult moment, how would you bounce back? How would you react to that? So these are things, again, that might come up in the interview. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. They also want to know, have you been forced to try and say to the interviewer that you want to come to the school when really you don't? So that's a common question that comes up. Do you really want to come to this school? Are you really enthusiastic? And that again will be something that's asked. They also want to know how you interact with adults. So that will come in the interview process. And being an online interview, I'm going to talk about this a little bit. The ball, it really is in your court when you do an online interview. As an interviewer, we're actually a little bit in the dark, and that works to your advantage, and I'll talk about that later. Boarding school. I don't know if Jemma, you want to talk about the boarding school.
Yeah, sure. So I suppose on the edge of what you said, I definitely get parents who have worked through answers with their children. Their children often can get to the point of sounding robotic. And I know we talked before about overcoaching, and what I say to parents who are worried about, are they going to be underprepared? I say, well, if they're overprepared, they're likely to give them tougher questions because they haven't prepared those ones. So that's just a kind of a moment that I thought was probably worth sharing. But yeah, for boarding school, if you're looking to enter a boarding school when you're 13, you may well be interviewed a year or so beforehand. It seems almost a bit paradoxical because you're not planning on actually entering, but what they want to do is they want to get a feel for you as a person, your personality, and how you are maturing. So if you're looking at 13+, but you've taken something like a pre-test, there may also be an interview in there. There's also scholarship interviews. So I know that there are, I've been chatting recently with a couple of parents whose children are going through academic scholarship interviews at the moment as well. So those are for either 11 plus or 13 plus entries. With boarding school, you're more likely to get something like a group interview, because they want to make sure that you can work well with others, to see what it would be like living in that type of school, which again, you may have questions around about any worries that you have, or about the how you've really spent your time away from home. Have you ever lived away from home? It doesn't matter if you haven't, but being able to show that you've thought about those things, and that you've considered them. All right. Oh. There we are. All right, so how does an online interview differ?
Right, I think actually, like I said, with an online interview, if I was the parent, I would be ecstatic, okay? So let me talk about this a little bit more. As an interviewer, I just finished some interviews for George's Medical School last year.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do is they get the candidate, they flash up their questions and the candidate responds and they video it, and then they send the video to me later on in the evening and I mark it. I have zero interaction with that candidate. In the same way, I'll talk about my day job as a doctor. So when a patient comes in and they come to my room and they're panting away and they're really breathless, I've kind of in my head thinking, wow, why are they breathless? Something's wrong here. If a patient comes into my room and they smell, they haven't had a shower for 3 days, again, I might be thinking about depression, whether they're anxious. Or if a patient comes into my room and they've got 4 or 5 bags of shopping and then they talk about back pain, I'm like, they haven't really got back pain. So before they've even opened their mouth, I've made a judgment, okay? I've got certain cues, and we call those non-verbal cues. With an online interview, I don't have that, and that actually works in your favour. It works against the interviewer, but it works for the interviewee. So, for example, if you're nervous, right now, I'm kind of twiddling my fingers a bit. I'm kind of kicking my legs under the desk. You cannot tell, right? If you've got a nervous child, this is perfect for you. Online interviews are great. You can have a stress ball. So you know those squidgy balls, you can have that under the desk. You can be doing that if you're nervous. You can, when you're nervous, you have a lot of energy, and that energy needs to go somewhere. With kids, what they do is they might twiddle their hair. So I always tell my clients, put the hair back. We also notice they speak quite quickly. In an online interview, you can do whatever you want under the desk. That nervous energy just dissipates away, okay? So it works in your favor. The other thing that we interviewers have, now someone like me, I've been trained to give interviews, we have something called unconscious bias, okay? Don't worry about the technical term, I'll break it down for you. For example, if I was doing an online interview, this is very hypothetical, but say someone had a poster of Tom Cruise in their background, I might think, okay, I think I'll give this person a place. Not because I like Tom Cruise, I'm just talking hypothetically, that I might start asking easy questions because I might happen to think Tom Cruise is the most amazing actor. So this is an example of bias on the interviewer. Another example of bias, if you have an online interview and I see a really messy bookcase, or I see a bed in the background, it's not made up, again, something called bias might influence my decision about whether I give this person a place. An official interviewer is trained to put away all that, but most 11 plus and 13 plus and 16 plus interviewers have bias. So why not eliminate all that and have a blank wall behind you? We've taken away everything that could possibly upset the interviewer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I've actually just picked up on a question that someone's asked, which is about looking into the camera, because it's really hard. I'm talking to you right now and I'm looking slightly to the side.
Yes.
How do we cope with being online and looking at the camera, or indeed getting distracted by the picture of yourself in the corner?
Yeah, so this is a really good point, and my clients know my hack for this. I've got a few hacks that I'm going to share. So if you notice, I haven't looked away from the camera the whole time. I don't know, hopefully that's the case. Because what I do, and I tell my clients to do, is get a big arrow in the terms of a Post-it note and say, look here, and stick it on your camera, okay? that will focus your eyes onto that small, tiny camera. Okay, it's a very simple trick. Just get an arrow or a marker that you can take away later, or a little note with an arrow and just say, look here. And that's what you need to do. But if I look at your picture, Gemma, on the screen, can you say I've taken my eye contact away? I'm looking at your face. I'm no longer giving the interviewer eye contact. Now, if I look at the camera, I'm looking as though I'm talking to you. So just get that simple arrow and put it there. So again, this favours the interviewer, because in a normal setting, we wouldn't have to do this, because automatically you would be given eye contact if we were face to face. So you do have to adapt when it's online. So one thing I say, have a clear background, get rid of all that bias, don't give the interviewer any bad impressions, okay? There are certain things that we've mentioned, like the internet glitch. Yep. Please do a mock run. So I had a story today, someone's camera went off right in the middle of the interview. Now, the fact that you know your interview is going to happen at a certain date and a certain time, and that it's online, that gives you a chance to do a mock run. You determine what room you're going to have it in, you determine what's in your background, you determine what you're going to wear. So beforehand, log into Zoom on one account, the parent logs into Zoom on another account, and you do a mock trial, okay? So the sound, the lighting, have a look at all that. Mm-hmm. Now, some things you're not going to understand, like a normal interview. Please don't sit there in silence, okay? Certain things in the interview will still come across. Awkward silences will always be awkward silences. We can't get rid of that, regardless if you're face-to-face or online. So I would say, always ask, okay? Don't just sit there twiddling your thumbs, looking around. If you don't understand, ask, and ask in a polite way. So I would say, could you rephrase that, please? I'm sorry, I didn't understand. This is a normal part of human conversation. Absolutely nothing wrong. And it's something that you do in a classroom. So again, I wouldn't say there's anything wrong with asking for help. And that's a sign of a good learner, rather than sitting there in agony where it's both awkward. Let's talk about dress. Even if it's Saturday or Sunday, I always say wear uniform. You're never going to get penalised for being overdressed. But again, what I talked about interview bias, if you come with a scruffy appearance, you've already introduced bias to the interviewer. So you've put in the mind that you're not that smart, you might not be taking it seriously. Why give the interviewer all those doubts? Go smart, okay? You can't lose that way. Again, I've had a couple of clients where I'm going to move the camera a bit. Their face is like that, okay? That's really annoying. So don't, you know, all these little tricks, sort all these out beforehand. Your face should be in the middle of the screen. You need to see my lips moving, okay? You need to see the facial expressions, because I can still give those non-verbal cues. I can still smile and come across as friendly. I could still look quite bored, you know, not appear very engaged. The interviewer can still get some pieces of information about your personality. I think this, your passion, that really comes through. You know, if you were to start talking about something you're interested in, I'm going to start moving my hands, I'm going to be, you know, really animated. My eyes are going to light up, I'm going to start smiling. I might start talking quickly like I'm doing now, because I'm very energetic and enthusiastic. If there's something that I don't really like, I might start talking like this and go very quiet, or I might look a bit shy, okay? So your personality and your body language does determine the confidence and enthusiasm you have about a subject.
And that is important as well for those students who don't feel that confident online, because that is exactly how they'll speak if they aren't pre-prepared or they aren't rehearsed in that way of speaking online. And I'm not saying preparing answers, it's the process. Because when I get students at the start, often they're mumbling, they might be looking down, and actually they might be talking about something they're interested in, but I can't often hear them because they're mumbling to themselves, and it's a bad conversation. You wouldn't do that necessarily if you were face to face, because you'd probably lift your head up a bit more. And so that's something that I always say, you know, passion has to shine through in your whole body and your voice as well.
Exactly. And I think, again, the online interview works really well. If you were to be in a face-to-face interview with 3 or 4, like a panel interview, there are some schools who have 2 interviewers in the room. Often the second person is an educational needs specialist. That might be quite intimidating. But you know, when I look in the camera, I have no idea who's in front of me. I don't know if any of you, there could be one person listening to this talk, there could be 60, I don't know. And that's the beauty of it. If you're nervous in front of people, it doesn't matter if they're 3 or 4 with Zoom, it's great. You know, you can just block them all out. A good night's sleep, all the stuff we say for normal interviews, you know, follow that. Have a good breakfast, have a good night's sleep, wake up refreshed. You might want to shower in the morning, you know, get the blood flow going, go for a little run, get the oxygen going to the brain, get the endorphins and adrenaline pumping. You might want to do all of that. Make sure you log in on time. It's like when you go to an interview and you're running late in traffic and you get all flustered. Children will get flustered as well. If they're worried about the internet connection or they haven't come and sat down on time, eliminate those worries. As a parent, take all that stress away and make sure they're set up properly. Also, yeah, make sure if you're on a tablet or phone that you're not getting these pings and messages and chats. It's really distracting. In a face-to-face interview, you wouldn't dare walk into the room, would you? You wouldn't pick up the phone, so don't do it on an online. So that, I would say that was just common sense.
Perfect. For the, I suppose for the internet glitch, occasionally it does happen.
Yeah.
I would also just have a backup. So if the internet goes down, have a hotspot ready. And this is what we did with university interviews over Christmas for Oxbridge. And the other thing is, if it happens, make sure that your child can log back in and can say, I'm really sorry, but the internet had a glitch. Let's get back, and the interviewer will pick back up. They are prepared for that happening. That's not your fault. There's nothing that can be done with that one. And the same thing if there's something their end with streaming and everyone freezes for a little bit. You know, that stuff does happen. It's unfortunate and it does sometimes put students off. So occasionally I will have a conversation about, you know, oh, if it doesn't work, then this is the plan of action we've got, so that students know that there is something in the background just in case that you are around and that you are going to do it. I wouldn't leave them completely on their own, but very much wouldn't hover either, and be there. There's actually 2 questions I think that have been asked. One of them is a background with, say, trophies or certificates better than one that's blank? Would it give an option to converse about it?
Yeah, I say these to my clients. We had one child who had like 10 trophies. I said, well, you're not only going to gain, you're not going to lose by having them on the background. People often don't have that availability. You might not have a mantelpiece or a ledge to put it on, but if you do, put them there. And you know, someone said, well, is it tacky? Well, if it's tacky, so what? You're not going to lose points over it. You can only gain. So absolutely, if you've got a ledge or if you've got a mantelpiece, put your trophies, put your certificates. Likewise, if you've got badges, put those on. You know, you're never going to lose points over that. And also, it shows you made an effort. You want to show off. That's the whole point of an interview. So that's a yes for me. I would put those.
Okay. And then someone else has also asked, I think it's more of a comment actually, but the idea of kind of silences, we mentioned those long silences, but for those of you that are concerned about short silences, I very often see children who rush into things. So for me, I would always say, please, first of all, let the interviewer finish talking, even if you know what question they're going to ask. And then a short pause before you answer makes you sound less prepared, because otherwise it sounds like, I've heard that question, I'm going to recite this piece of the script, and therefore as an interview it hasn't come from their head. So I do, to my students, I'd say, you know, just a short pause before answering, and if you don't have something to answer, then ask them a clarifying question. If it's something that's confusing, if you can't think, they've asked for an example of something, you can't think of one, just tell them that you're going to think of one. So just say, I'm going to take a moment to have a think. Is that okay? Yeah. And they'll always say yes. But do kind of keep that communication going. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that thing about you know, not rushing, I think that's really important. Also that, you know, when you want to clarify a question, I do tell my clients, just, you can use that twice, but no more. You can't keep using that card if you don't understand. So try not to use it too often. It's okay once or twice to ask for help.
Yeah. And then if you don't necessarily know, I would say, I would always start the conversation with, well, I'm unsure, however, the however being the really important, so that you've always got an answer or a working out for an academic question. I'm not certain, but could it be?
Yeah.
So that I'm not certain gives your brain just a little bit of time to catch up, and then you can go on with what you think it might be.
Yeah.
All right. I'm aware that we're about half an hour in.
All right, we'll try and speed things up a little bit. Okay.
That's all right. We'll try and get to these. Here we are, presenting the best of you. I like this.
Yeah, so presenting the best of us. So some of this we've touched on already. This is a little thing I've put together. Remember the word black, because I'm into Marvels, Black Panther, so that's how I remember things with imagery. Okay, so body language, we've talked about a little bit already. Make sure your face is in the center of the screen. Look interested. So part of that is sitting upright, eye contact, not being slouched, not looking off all everywhere. Lighting is very important, and the biggest glare that will give you the worst lighting is a window. So to avoid having a window in the background, avoid a direct bedroom light, that also gives a horrible glare. So again, these things you can iron out before the interview. We touched on appearance, dress smartly, girls, put your hair back. I know why, but they do fiddle around with their hair when they're nervous. Communication. So that's actually what you say, and I think we'll touch a lot bit about that as we go on to the presentation. Why have I put kindness here? Well, I think this is the most important attribute I want you guys to try and present. Passion and kindness. If those two words that you're going to take away, when you get those moral, ethical questions, for example, a child is crying, what will you do? You found £100 on the floor, what are you going to do? Kindness is the key word. Whatever situation they present at you, act as though you're a kind, generous person. Because that's what we want. They want these people to come into their school who are kind, who are going to be part of the school community, who are going to go that extra mile for their friend and their colleague and their teacher. So that's why I put this in. Do remember kindness. And although it's online, your personality will come through, okay? And I put this in to remind myself, think of your favorite movie character. You know, how they're not real. They're people that we've seen on a screen, like an online image. But yet, why they are our favorite is because their personality and their passion comes through. So never forget, what you are like will come through on the interview. All right. I don't know, Gemma, if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think I'd probably back up in that whilst all different schools have slightly different things that they're looking for. So one might have a particularly great sports team, or one might be more focused on their website about science or something. They are all looking for, kind and honest and communicative and open children.
Yeah.
Perfect. I'm just going to very quickly click escape because I'm wanting to make sure. No, we are. I just wanted to check that we were on the presentation the right way. There we are. So these red flags.
Yeah. So again, we touched on a little bit of those. So these are the no-nos, okay? The busy background. So, lots going on in the background really deters the interviewer from what you're saying and looking at you. So try and make it clean, neutral colours. Don't worry, I don't want you to go painting the walls white or anything. So just keep it clean, uncluttered. Also busy bodies. So, had an interview the other day and the mum walked in and the child just lost her train of thought. Happens to the best of us, that's normal. Busy bodies in terms of parents hanging around, I'm not saying you're a bad parent, but sometimes when children think about their parents, a little bit of stress comes in. Your body tenses, your jaw clenches, your tummy might go a bit funny, especially if all you ever do is talk about 11 plus. Doesn't mean you don't have a great relationship. It just brings up some of those feelings.
Yep.
So, parents.
I also see them sometimes do this.
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. And it's kind of holding things up or telling them what to say, and actually what they're saying is incorrect. It's the child's personality we want to come through, not the adults. So, and I think Gemma said something really important, that don't be too far away, because if there's a technical glitch, you might need to help out. But don't be in their view. I certainly wouldn't be in the same room, because because I think that would cause a little bit of a different kind of stress. But, you know, be accessible. You can have the doors open, be in another room. Now, busybodies can also mean siblings, pets. So again, make sure they're out of sight, out of view, and out of sound, okay? Difficult when little ones are running around. So really try and, again, mentally rehearse what you're going to do with all those factors, okay? It's a really important part of the interview and important for your child. It will make them perform. They don't want to worry about all that kind of stuff. When I did an interview session and I said at the end, is there anything you're worried about? And he said, well, you know, my brother always walks into the room. Again, the parent needs to take on that worry. Ask your child, is there anything that I can do, anything I can make it easier for you? And deal with those, okay? That's not something the child should be worried about, and that's something the parent needs to take ownership of.
Yeah, I think also if a parent's in the room, a child is more likely to defer to them for an answer.
Yeah.
So if asked a difficult question that they can't think of, it's almost an instinct to go, but mum, whereas if you're far enough away to deal with issues, but at the same time, you know, outside the door, I think someone's put down there, yeah, Sal's put down, sitting right outside the door, that's useful because you can hear what's happening, but you're also not distracting. You're not getting to the point where a child's going to look off screen and you're going to see them try and get hold of mum because they can't see they don't know what to say.
Exactly. And I think the overrehearsed, I think you've kind of touched as well, you know, not having sentences to rehearse and the child's fumbling over what to say. Okay, this is my biggest hack of doing an online interview, okay? We know hobbies are going to get asked, okay? And sometimes a child forgets. So use the online interview to your advantage, okay? I love certain things, okay? So got my props. I love baking. Got my spoon. I love collecting things. I've got candles, love collecting candles. I'm going to put these on my table, okay? I also love gardening. I'm going to put that on my table. I'm going to put them just onto view where I can see them. And those are my props for when I get asked about hobbies and interests. Let's say worst comes to worst, unlikely scenario, the interviewer says, you know, can you move your camera around? I want to make sure there's no cheat sheets anywhere. If they see these three things, that is not suspicious at all. If they see flow diagrams and mum and dad's written hobbies 1, 2, and 3, that's not going to look very good. And also the child is going like that, trying to read it all.
Yep,
visual props are amazing. That's why I say I love online interviews as an interviewee. So put the props in. I'll give you another example. A child, I said, what's your favourite subject? And they said maths. And I said, what did you like in maths? And they, you know, offered themselves, they love sequences. And I said, okay, give me an example of a sequence. And then they said triangular numbers. And then I asked again, we had another go, and she couldn't remember. And I said, why don't you get something triangular, put it on your desk? And that worked a treat. In the end, she had a triangle, I think it was like one of those Quality Street ones, the green ones. And I said, right, your mission is make sure you don't eat it. So you can in your interview. And that was it. That's all she needed to do. Yeah. Use your visual props.
With mine, they often put them in a bookcase. So bookcase for the favourite book. Or you can put something that you want to put forward. Often interviewers will ask for sometimes if there's a face-to-face interview for you to bring an object so you can talk about it. And the same thing I say for an online interview. If you've got one there, then you can say to them, I really love drawing, and here's something that I drew that I'm really proud of. And you're much easier to talk about. It's much more passionate than trying to describe something that actually isn't your passion. Have it there, have it able to be shown. But don't worry about trying to force it into conversation. I think that's the other side, is where people try and, you ask what's your favourite subject, and they go, but this is the thing I drew. And,
exactly.
It's not quite the right fit. So it's got to be kind of you've got to find a balance.
Yeah. And I think this is the beauty again of online interviews. You can have that model lying around, you can have that art piece lying around, you can have that Lego thing that you've made, and if they ask and it comes into the conversation, you can show it. Favorite books, I might have these on my desk. So got Kill a Mockingbird, a bit of Machiavelli, I might put that there. My favorite books. Who's your inspirational hero? Well, if you forget, I'm going to go for Martin Luther King or Malala. So again, that could be on the child's desk, just visual, simple visual props. We're not telling them what to say, we're just giving a few clues. If they forget, if they stumble, have them on your desk. Very simple, but very effective.
Yeah, and keep them limited. So not like a whole load of them, but very limited, but worth, and also worth picking up sometimes. Sometimes it's nice to show things.
And only if you need them. Only if you struggle on those questions, you can have them. So, okay, lack of interest. I think we've touched on that. You must look engaged. They don't want to have someone in their lesson who's bored. So look engaged, look enthusiastic. And I think listening comes into this, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later, but you must be able to make sure that you've listened to the question. Low voice, we've mentioned, long silences, fibbing. This is one pet hate of all interviewers. So we had one client who said they really want to come to the school because there's a hockey pitch. Well, actually, the school didn't have a hockey pitch. So either they got confused or they hadn't actually seen the school at all. So, or it might be a hobby. You might think, okay, yeah, you know, I play cricket for a club. And then the interviewer will say, well, you know, what position do you play? Oh, I'm a bowler. And then they'll say, what bowler do you like, spin bowling? And then they have no idea what they're talking about. You can catch people out if you're fibbing, and really it's not, no need, it's not worth it. And this comes back into believing. The child has to believe and have some certain confidence. They don't need to fib. You just need to describe yourself, the typical things you do, the activities you do. You don't need to make anything up. You're just digging a hole for yourself, and it's very easy to get trapped that way, I think.
Yeah, and it's also, from an interviewer's point of view, for me, if it's over rehearsed or if it seems like it's fibbed, I will go to some slightly obscure question a lot quicker than if I'm having a conversation about somebody's interest, because that's a natural conversation. If somebody is you know, over rehearsed and they're reeling off these things that just sound like it's not them, and they're even their voice and the way that they're speaking is different, then automatically I'll be asking you, what would you do with £1 million? Because I can't get anything out of that normal conversation. So I've got to go to something unusual, and that's more stressful for a child.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect. So we are now at general interviews. Oh, somebody has asked the question, and I'll take this one actually, on why in certain schools they interview parents, because this is a very, very much a boarding school type question. Typically a boarding school or a 13+ entrance, there will be for some of the top ones, there are parental interviews. They're not interviews, they're more chats, but it is to make sure that you are the type of parent to support your child and to be able to support them in that community. It's not a interview as such, in that they don't want to know any particular personal details about you, but what they will want to do is they will want to chat to you about your life, about what you do. They're not trying to catch you out. I know that there are some people who are worried about maybe they're a single parent, or maybe they're applying for bursary, and they're worried about these interviews because they think that that's what the interview is for. The interview is actually just there so that your child, basically to put some more context around your child, so they know the background of your child, they know a bit about you as parents, and how you view education, and what your view is in terms of fitting with the school's view. So for boarding schools, that is something that that they look at, and it is something that that often lots of schools want parents to get involved. So if you have something that you've done, if you're on a parent-teacher association, then by all means talk about that. If you have done a talk in your child's school, then that might be something that's interesting. But they really want to know, you know, how are you going to be involved with your child's education and with their schooling. All right.
So I think we've got some sample questions here, and there's some 2 really useful websites that you can go to. Also, obviously, I have to plug my book, which is on Amazon and Waterstone. So do have a look at that. There's 50 sample questions on there and just some tips as well. Are we taking questions, Gemma? Are we going to let people have a go, or are we lack of time here?
So I've been going through the questions, I think, in comments, but guys, if you have specific questions, now would be a great time to drop them down. And let's pick a question. If you're sitting there with your child, let's have a think. Which one do you think would be worth just having a chat with your child about? Should we go for, let's go for tell me about a lesson that you really enjoyed. We'll let them have about a minute. And if you've got a question, pop it down in the comments. If your child is telling you an answer right now, pop that down in the comments as well. And then after about a minute, we'll have a quick chat about how we would answer that question. So tell me about a lesson that you really enjoyed. What made it so enjoyable? So what would be your answer or your child's answer to that question? What really is the interviewer wanting to know? Right. Oh, thanks, Deep. Deep's saying here that we're a very useful session.
Excellent.
That's
good.
Nice to hear. I'm glad to hear that one. Again, if anyone else has any of those questions, just drop them down to us.
Well, thanks, Saba from 11 Plus Journey, and I have to thank Jemma for organising this as well.
Oh, Saba's got a question as well. Oh. What questions are they likely to ask parents in the parents' interview? It's usually what you would bring. I think we've covered that one. Okay. Oh, someone has answered our question. Here we are. Mavish, I'm getting to your question in a moment because I've got that slightly later down. Okay.
Should we have a chat about this question, Jemma? Should I give you thoughts, or should we wait for answers?
So I think people have probably had a little time to think it through, and to try and have a think about how they would answer it. What would be your tips?
Yeah, and I think, again, going back to this thing about being truthful, it doesn't have to be a highly academic subject, okay? They just want to try and show, what do you like? So it could be something really simple. It might not be science, maths. It could be something like geography or RS, anything that gets your passion going, that gets your enthusiasm going. So I'm thinking my own child experience. Again, we're not making it up. I really enjoyed the lessons that had a bit of song element to it, like French. We might have taught it with some songs. That made it really fun, and we did it together. So again, these aren't trick questions. They're just say what you feel, something that you really did enjoy. It's just a matter of scanning those memories. And I don't think there's any trick other than that.
No, I think for me, I'd like to, if I was answering this, I'd say science. I'm a science teacher. So definitely was my favourite stuff at school. But I'd also have a reason and possibly something that I'd done recently in it. So I'd say, my favourite lessons are science because I really like the experiments and the practicals. And then I'd tell them about one that I found interesting. So last week when it was icy, there was a great one where people were blowing bubbles and they were freezing over. It was really cool to see that the bubbles had frozen. You could see all the little ice crystals in there. So again, you get a little bit of passion, a little bit of story, and it also makes you memorable because there's not going to be anyone else who's talking about frozen bubbles because it's come from you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. Okie dokes. Group interviews. I think we've just about got time.
Okay.
I'm aware that we're over time a little bit, but we'll keep going.
Okay, group interviews. So, again, they want to see the dynamics of how you work with a group. So this could be as a question. So it might be, tell me about a time you worked as a team. And they might be doing a group interview online. It's very doable, as we know some of the schools have already done that. And it's just like as if you're in a real group. So listening skills. Really listen to what other people are saying, because you might use that in your answer. Well, I really liked what Edward said. However, I might disagree a little bit. I agree with what Simon said, really showing that you're part of the team, really showing that you'll be really good in a classroom. And it's a balance between expressing too much and standing back. So you want to be part of the team, you want to be noticed. Now, a good interviewer setup, they will go around and they will ask, and you won't have to shout out. However, we do know some schools, kids are shouting out. So it really depends how the school structures it. Hopefully a good interviewer will say, okay, Tariq, why don't you tell me your point of view now? I think online, Gem, I don't know what your thoughts is. Stand-up political online is a little bit trickier. Usually when you're face-to-face, you might be able to do that. Just make sure that you'll get your point across, answer the question, going back to listening skills. What's your favourite hobby? So don't start rambling on about academic subjects. Listen to the question, what's being asked. And then children, one thing they tend to do is when they're nervous, they tend to waffle. Know when to stop. And I think that's something, yeah, you know when the clock is ticking, so keep your answers concise. And also you have to let the others have a go. So there's a balance between going on and on and on and knowing when to stop and you've answered the question. Be prepared to change your mind. Absolutely. It shows that you're teachable. Okay. So again, it's something with current affairs and moral questions, they might keep pushing and pushing. If you want to stick to your guns, that's fine. But there's nothing wrong with changing your opinion. You don't have to be right. I don't know if anything you want to add, Gemma, about groups.
I suppose sometimes with the group interviews, I think I was the one who wrote stand up for the little guy, because if there is someone who's not spoken, you can often again show that kindness by just pointing out that we haven't heard from Edward over here, and maybe he's got something to say. So I know that there's been points where I've watched group interviews and there's been some really strong characters, but the ones that I've gone away liking the most are the ones that have stood up for others. And also that sometimes there's a group task where you have to pick 5 items to keep on a desert island, or decide how to spend a certain amount of money. They're often timed tasks, and although the interviewer will let you know, they often won't let you know until about 30 seconds beforehand. So if you're the person going, guys, I think we need to move on a little bit, you will show that you have something to offer, but without overpowering the group. All right.
Okay. I think we've talked about listening, so we'll skip this one. Right, perfect. I'm going to give everything I know about COVID in 5 minutes.
Go!
I'm going to give the best press conference that Boris can't even give. Okay, so listen, you don't have to know about COVID, but it can come up, and if you can talk about it, it's going to be great. So I've put together a very simple guide. Now, some people's families, you might have had a really bad experience, you might have had a loved one or someone who's really ill, then you don't have to talk about it. It comes up in a question, what have you read in the news recently? They're not specifically going to say, tell me about COVID. So it's an opportunity to show off your knowledge. What have you read in a newspaper? What have you seen on TV? And then you can use COVID. Now, COVID has affected everyone. So this is one of the reasons why I chose it, because we're all online schooling, we're all in lockdown, so we can't get away from it. So I'm going to do a quick synopsis. Can I have the next slide, please, Gemma?
Yes.
Right. 3 quick facts, okay? This is a new type of virus. We call the technical term SARS-CoV-2, and it was found in 2019. Now, people think it's called COVID-19 because of the year it was discovered, and that's not true. It's a type of virus.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's not named COVID-19 because it was discovered in 2019. So what happened in Wuhan, China, they said a lot of people had started having chest infections, and the technical term is pneumonia. And they didn't know why, and they didn't know why people were falling sick all the time. And in the end, the scientists discovered there was this new virus, and they usually noticed it in mammals, birds, and reptiles. 11th of March 2020, a very important date, the World Health Organization declared a pandemic, a worldwide pandemic. So what does COVID cause? Well, mainly respiratory symptoms, okay? It affects, what we mean by that is it affects the lungs. So coughing is very common. We also get problems with breathing, and this is why we're so worried about it, because the elderly and people who have existing medical problems, they can get really unwell and struggle to breathe. And you might have heard in the news people running out of oxygen, and that's a real cause for concern, which is why they're trying to get the numbers low. Also affects your smell and taste, and you might have been in this situation, that's okay. If you get any problems or alter smell or taste or a cough, you have to isolate. So simple symptoms, very much like the flu, but can be deadly in certain groups. And the next one. Right, don't worry about learning these times. I just put this in for fun, just for a bit of reference. Look how roller coaster ride we've been on. So it all started in March, we went on a lockdown, and then Boris said, okay, local lockdowns, And then there was a relaxation of lockdown, and then we went into a lockdown for a second one, and then we had 4-tier restrictions. Exactly. And I just thought, this is crazy. It's so much just looking at it. Look what we've all been through, and we're back in lockdown again. Phew. So COVID affects everybody. That's all I want to take you from that. Life has changed. Look at the new words we've come across. It's coming up everyday language. Social distancing, pandemic, lockdown. I read someone that was a key word in the Collins Dictionary. These are all new words that become everyday. Social distancing, masks, washing hands, that's our new normal. You know, when I see photos of me in groups with my friends, that just seems abnormal now. So again, you might get an interview question, how has life changed in lockdown? What did you do over lockdown? What have you learned? And again, not trick questions. You know, I really appreciate the concept of family or the concept of meeting my friends. These are all things that could come up in your interview.
Yep.
Next slide.
I know schools have asked sometimes, you know, what is your school doing?
Yeah.
Or how are you learning at the moment? So
Yeah.
those types of things it comes up to as well.
Okay, so treatment of corona, there is no cure. Okay, we don't have a cure at the moment, but we've decided there is an exit strategy. There is a way out, and vaccines, as well as all the other things that you're doing, like staying at home, wearing masks, social distancing, these are our ways out. Now, the vaccine, there's 3 at the moment on the market. What it does, it teaches the body to fight the infection, and it stops you catching coronavirus, and it stops you becoming seriously ill. So vaccines are really big in the news at the moment. And if we have the next slide, there's 3 that's been approved in the UK. And I've just summarized this very simply in a way that your child can understand, okay? Don't worry about how the vaccines work. You're not going to know that. No teacher will know that yet either, but I've put it in there in case you're really fascinated. The main thing is just know that there are 3. If you want to know the names, that's a bit of bonus point. Moderna, Oxford and Pfizer. If I wanted to know about more, I would go for Pfizer, because I guarantee you the person who invented Pfizer, he's going to get the Nobel Peace Prize. Okay, if he doesn't, I'm going to eat Gemma's hat. I know this guy's going to. So very important key discovery. In 20, 30 years time, they're going to talk about this moment. Okay, it's such a big moment that we have this vaccine. The Pfizer one's about 95% effective, 2 doses, 3 weeks apart. That actually has changed to 12 weeks. There's a lot of controversy because the UK government is following something that Pfizer did not do themselves, okay? So a little bit of a concern around that. The problem with the Pfizer one, it has to be stored at -70. So they're really worried that countries like Africa, who don't have these expensive fridges and can't transport them, aren't going to benefit from this vaccine. However, the Oxford one, it can be like a fridge, like your normal fridge, we can store it. So people like in the developing countries can really access this vaccine. And the Moderna one just recently been approved, 94.5% effective, very much works in the same way as Pfizer. So those are the 3 vaccines in a nutshell. I think
like I'm learning a lot here.
Yay. Okay, the reason why I put this in, because UK has broken the boundaries worldwide. It was the first country to be approved of the Pfizer vaccine. We were the world's envy, and people started saying, oh, no, they're just showing off. We have to show off. This is a landmark, and I think kids should know this. You kids are part of history, okay, as we speak. This vaccine that's been developed is a monumental occasion, and you've witnessed it. 90-year-old Margaret Keenan, throw in a fact, she was the first person in the world to receive a vaccine, a British citizen, okay? So I love these facts. If you can put them in, learn them, I think it will look great. Okay, you can see I'm very passionate about COVID. Okay, how could COVID be incorporated in an interview? It could come up in various ways. You don't have to mention it, but if you do, then it's great. It shows that you're up to date with the news. It could be something personal. They ask you, like, how has lockdown affected you? What have you read in the news recently? It could come up that way. Ethical, moral questions. Should we force people to have a vaccine? Again, there's no right or wrong answer. And, you know, you could say, I can see why, and I can see not why.
And that's something that could come up as a group interview. That's something those debates have come up before previously in groups.
Exactly. And I think a little bit of understanding about COVID would be good in that case. It could be something as a challenging, you know, you could think of a new game to play in lockdown, explain to the interviewer the rules and any equipment you need, you know, it can come up in all sorts of ways. So I thought I'd just do a quick synopsis of what COVID was. I think that's it. Should we have a look at Okay, no, yeah. Go out, there's a lovely book. He's a famous author. What did he write? Gruffalo, that was it. He's illustrated this book, so do go and get it if you want to know. It's lovely for kids. I've also got another video on my Facebook page about coronavirus, so have a look at that. And I think on the menu tab of my Facebook page, there's a little sheet about COVID as well. Very simple, great for kids to digest.
All great stuff to go and check out. Perfect.
Look.
Thanks so much. All right, so I am going to just have another look through. No, I think we're good. I think we're good. We've got a couple of questions that have been asked.
Okay.
Actually, they're both ones I'm just about to get onto, actually. So probably should just keep going. Do keep writing your questions down in the comments. We are looking. We're pulling some of them out, and as I said, some of them are just coming up. So this is one thing that I wanted to share. I've mentioned it briefly before. The idea of telling a story. We've said before. Be honest. Be kind. Be passionate. Be positive. But this no one word answers is a really big thing for me. If somebody says, what's your favorite subject? Don't just tell me IT. Tell me why. Tell me something you did. Tell me the first time you found it interesting. Tell me what you and your friends do in your spare time around that subject. Just tell me a story around it. So I was interviewing a student a couple of days ago, and we were discussing subjects, and we were discussing art, and we were talking about, he said, yeah, I'm not the world's best artist, and I'm not. It's not one of my top enjoyable subjects. I said, okay, let's talk about why. And he told me this great story about when he drew an elephant, and he said it was going really, really well until I came to draw the tusks, and then it looked a bit crooked. And I thought, I'm going to remember you because you're the crooked elephant boy, and therefore I exactly know your story. And it made me smile. It gave me so much of an insight into someone's personality rather than a standard pre-prepared answer. That idea of putting a story into something and really telling me honestly, like it was something that really came from the heart, and it's something that it made me chuckle, and it meant that I can really see, okay, you know what, I probably couldn't draw an elephant, I'd probably get the tusks wrong, and I can see why that means that, or why that might play into why art isn't necessarily your favourite subject if you enjoy coming top. So just give us a little story. A story is always a good thing to pop in. And if you're preparing with your child, do run through those I'll remember when type stories. So I wouldn't prepare them and sit down and say, remember this story, but it would be something I'd have a conversation over the dinner table or over question books. And if they've got a story about being made captain of the cricket team, or a game that they played particularly well, or a way that they shone, just remind them of that, and make sure that they're familiar with that story, so that if that question comes up, they can then go, oh yeah, that was the type of story. That was a way to be able to tell the interviewer a little bit about you. All right, a couple of these have already been asked. Here we are. And I know that this has come up in the comments. So have you applied to other schools? Of course you have. It would be unusual to be year 6 and not have applied to other schools, or not have looked around other schools. So don't tell them no, because of course you have. It just seems a bit strange that you'd say no, but do say why this one would be the one you'd like to go to. So I always say, if you're asked, regardless of when it is, a 13 plus or an 11 plus, do say yes, I've looked at other schools. However, I'd really love to go to this one because, or because of this reason, this one's my top choice. So give me a reason why this one is of interest to you, but do be honest. Picture tasks. So occasionally, it typically is, again, more boarding school, independent, more 13 plus, but it has been known to come up in 11 plus. And in fact, I think it is coming up in 11 plus. St. Paul's, I think, has said that they're doing a picture from memory. Picture tasks are often where you are given a picture and then you could be asked, what you think of it. Very open. You're never going to be asked who painted it. People always seem to think there's like this art part that they don't know the answer to. There is no answer. They want you to be able to talk. So if someone gave me that, I would be saying, okay, well, it looks a bit like there's lots of swirls in the background, and maybe there's an alien ship and it's landed in the sea, and this one is all these different things. I'd be talking about the colours and maybe how I liked the swirls, and I liked the fact that there was blue and red, but I wouldn't be telling you who drew it, because I don't know who drew it at all, and I won't be telling you what the subject is, because I think there might be houses, but I don't really know. So that hopefully deals with the picture one. The unusual questions. So somebody here has written, what would you do if you were invisible for a day? Those types of questions. Again, there's no right answer. If I borrowed £1 million, would I be a millionaire? They want to see you and your thoughts, and as a child, you and your thoughts, and for you to be able to explain your thoughts. So, what would you do if you were invisible for a day has a number of different answers depending on who you are, but be able to justify it. As Afrosa said, be kind with it and be honest with it. So you wouldn't want to say, I'd go and I'd rob a bank, because it's probably not something that you'd want to do, and probably something you wouldn't really do if you were invisible. But do tell us, and what would you do when you're invisible? Maybe I don't know. And I spend a moment thinking about it. And I go, oh, okay, well, maybe I would play a joke on my friends, because we're always playing practical jokes on each other. And that way they get a little bit of idea about your personality. The question of, here we are, yep, again, I think someone has asked about, what question should you ask the school at the end? And they do often give you that chance, almost always give you that chance. And I would always ask something you can't find out on the website. So, because if you ask something you can find on the website, you might as well have done it. And for some of my 13+ students, I will get them to go through the website. I will get them to a point where they know what's on the website, and then say, well, what would be your next question? So then you can say, well, I looked on your website and I saw that you have a hockey club, and you've got a trampolining club, and you've also got a tennis club. And I'd be interested in all of those 3 clubs. So can you tell me whether they all run at the same time? Or, can you tell me how many clubs I can take in year 7? Because it shows you've put the effort in, you've gone away, you've spent that time on their website, you've got that information, and then you come up with a question. And yes, you've thought ahead. Of course you have, because you've prepared for the interview. So that might be something to consider having a look through if you haven't already done so. Okay, we're getting there. Tell me an example of is a type of question. Tell me an example of when you have led a team, when you have come across problems at school, or when you have struggled with something. Actually struggling to think of them, but but tell me an example of a fairly standard. I recommend the STAR technique, which is the situation. So what kind of thing were you doing? The task, what did you have to do within that? The action, what did you take, but also what the action of the whole group was if you're doing like a leadership, and the result. And I wouldn't say those words, but I would use that to structure my answer. So if somebody asked me, tell me an example of when you have been a leader, I would say, well, okay, at my Brownie unit, there was a overnight camp, and we had to put up a tent, and we needed to put the tent up in the next hour, but there was a group of 6 of us, and only 2 of us had ever put a tent up before. So what we did was I took charge and I read out all the instructions, and there were groups of pairs of 2 people who were doing individual tasks. And then once we put everything together, we came back together and we assembled the whole tent, and we got it done within 40 minutes, and we had 20 minutes to go to a campfire and go and eat s'mores. So then I would use that situation, task, action, results to be able to organize my thoughts. And then there's just some kind of unusual questions, like the foreign country one as well. Okay. Afrosa, gone over. We've got over in time.
Yeah.
Are we okay to keep going, or have we got to stop?
I'm okay. Saba, I don't know if she wants to.
Okay. Are we good to go? Are we good to continue? I think we're going to
just go for it until they just chuck us off.
Keep going. Okay, so for some of you who have academic interviews coming up, or you're looking for an academic scholarship, you may have an academic question coming up, or you may have been told you can have some maths and English. Don't phrase it as a chance for an interviewer to test you. It is a chance for you to show your skills. Very much a different change. So a lot of students get very worried about these tests because, or these interviews, because they're not tests. But in terms of rephrasing it, it's a chance for you to show off. It's a chance for you to show what you can do and to really shine. So as I put down here, there's so many categories at which you may have you may have ended up doing some academic questions. So if you've done, I said, pre-test, but there's a second stage, and that second stage involves interviewing, they may give you academic questions. If you have been told you're doing an academic interview, so you've been told that there will be math and English or general questions within there. If you have been told that you are doing an academic scholarship and you've taken the pre-test, or if you have you are applying for a scholarship and you've not been told, they might just throw them in. So it is worth knowing that the kind of style of it and how it works. So I've got a little bit. Oh, it's very blurry, but that's okay. A little bit of example on how it may be structured or how it's looking. So over on the left-hand side of the page, there is a poem. It's The Night Mail. It's one of my favourite poems, and it's one I like to give out for practice interviews. And the reason that I like this poem is it's not obvious of what you're writing about. So it allows me to be able to get the student to read through, and sometimes they'll read through on their own, sometimes they'll be asked to read aloud. Sometimes I have known this being a poem of discussion, so a group version. It's unlikely to be nowadays online, but if you are watching this on replay and you've got a group interview coming up and they've said that it might be some academic questions, I have known this come up as a group academic question. What do you think the poem's about? And what I'm looking for is I am looking for students to pull out certain phrases. So most students will pull out night mail. Okay, well, maybe it's a postman. And then we can see the letters for the rich, letters for the poor. That makes sense. But the problem that we get is, well, it says her, so maybe it's a postwoman. Gradients against her, but she's on time. And then we get to shoveling white steam over her shoulder. And I've had lots of interesting explanations about people, post women, swimming their way through fog, often with this one. And then the next line, snorting noisily as she passes. So we get a noisy post woman. And at this point, often students may need to go back and look at their original assumptions, because it turns out it's not a post woman. I'm not going to tell you what it's all about. I'm going to let you and any students who are listening work it out, but it is not a post woman. So the types of things that could be asked, you could be asked, what do you think that poem's about? You could be asked, why do you think the author uses this specific word? So why would they say wind-bent grasses? Why don't you say bent grasses? If you're looking at a creative piece, you might be asked, how does the author bring tension? Or how does the author show that the character is excited? Or you might just be asked what might happen next, or to find an example of a literary technique and tell me why it's interesting. And that's something that normally in a written piece, you would be asked a similar type of question, but you'd be given certain lines and said to find a literary technique, or you might be asked, what technique is this? So all we're doing is we're now asking it verbally. It's no different to anything that's been prepared for. So this Night Mail, the Night Mail poem, I've come across in English 13 pluses. I've come across in 11 pluses as well, actually, but written. So it's just it's a different way of asking. I know that there is a school, I can't remember off the top of my head, there is definitely one that is asking people to do a piece of writing during their interview. There are some short online tests that are being given alongside interviews. But when you're doing this discursive, this idea of academic interview, they're not just going to give you the question and leave you. It's going to be a discussion. So if someone said to me, if I said to a student, what do you think that poem's about? And they told me postwoman. So, okay, well, tell me how you know that. And they might give me some examples. And then I'd put to them, well, actually, what about this one? Stares from the bushes at her blank-faced coaches. What's that really mean? And then I'd wait for them to try and work it out for me. So the role of an interviewer at this point is to guide a student and to develop their knowledge and to develop their analysis. So they won't leave your child to just work it out. They will probe. They will try and ask, well, why do you think that? If they need to. Ideally, your child will be telling them, I can tell it's a postwoman because, or I can tell it's this because. But if not, they'll be asked why. And someone has asked to me, is it bad if a child gets it wrong and then changes their mind? Definitely not, no, because if you read the first 4 lines of this poem, very much sounds like it could be a postwoman. But as we go through, we get to that last line, it seems like it might not be quite as much. So absolutely fine. And it's a real thing to practice with an academic interview, is to practice speaking your ideas out loud. It's something that people struggle with. So that idea of we're very used to reading, writing, not necessarily discussing. And if you are preparing in the next couple of days, you're preparing for an academic interview, you're wanting to try and bring out a why don't you think this, or why do you think that, and why is this interesting? And very much your child can be speaking out loud as they work things out. And that's what I'll go on to with the math as well. So with the math examples, you've got a choice. You kind of got multi-step questions or slightly shorter questions. So I've got a multi-step one, and then I've got those 2 shorter versions. With the multi-step, I get used to speaking out loud. Just like Afrosa said at the start with keeping things around, then I would also keep some paper nearby if you know you've got an academic interview, so that you can say to them, is it okay if I write down my calculations? They might say no, but you can ask. You know, it depends, very much depends on the question, depends on the interviewer sometimes. So always ask if you think that it's something that is worth writing down. So for example, this multi-step, I'd struggle to do it unless I wrote it down. So again, get used to speaking out loud. So it's a lot more about it's a lot more about your method when it comes to math. than the answer often. So I got 30% on a 10 problems test. Okay, so if there was 10 problems, that would mean 3 of them are correct. And you go through and you talk out your answer so they can see what you are doing. So that is something that's a little bit trickier. And I think some students who are used to writing it down just need to have a little bit of a practice on writing out those longer multi-step questions and really talking them out. With the shorter stuff, again, what's the difference between volume and area? What's the product of this? They're often looking to see key skills. So these are often where you would have had an exam and then it's been replaced with an interview, and they want to see, do you know these types of terminology? So product. So if you said to somebody, okay, what's the product of 12 and 5? I as an interviewer be hoping that they say, okay, product means, or that they'd be doing that sum and they'd be saying it out loud so that I can hear what they're doing, because then I know exactly what's happening. I'm getting that verbal feedback as well as anything that they might be writing down or that they might be showing me. So with those English and those maths examples, the big talking, and we're moving quite quickly for some people who are doing an online interview now. If you're looking from moving from doing a test to doing something that's academic, you are needing to practice that speaking out loud because they're used to doing it on paper. Okay, I think we're done. Hopefully everybody has not minded us being too long. Sorry guys.
I think they can always replay it if they have to go off. So
exactly. Perfect. And of course, I want to say a really big thanks to 11 Plus Jenny for letting us come on. They let me back on again. And also for Afrosa to come along and give us your expertise. Thank you guys, because I know that this has been really helpful to our members, and yeah, and it seems like people have gotten a lot out of it. So thank you. All right, so if you do have questions or you're watching this on catch up, we will be in the comments answering any comments, going through and making sure if anybody does have extra questions, then please do ask them in the comments. If you do have specific stuff, ask on this group. 11 Plus Journey is here to help. We are here to help you as much as we can. If you're watching this on replay, you want some more in-depth advice, Afrosa has a book, and where is it available? Tell us.
Waterstones and Amazon.
Waterstones and Amazon, there we are, that's where to get it from. And then obviously if you're looking for any one-to-one practice or anything specific, then I'm right in thinking both of us run one-to-one practices, and I've stuck the emails there. All right, perfect. Thank you so much for guys who have been listening. Thank you, Saba, for letting us on 11 Plus Journey. I'm sorry it took so long. Thanks, Afrosa, for putting up with me.
And thank you. I was the wingman.
Perfect. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Brilliant. All right, then. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.